Welcome to my Mountain West 2022 football preview video. This video has been a long time coming. I've promised it all off season. I almost didn't get to it, but I'm a man of my word, and here it comes. Anyone keeping up my channel will know how busy I've been this offseason between my Boise State 2022 football preview series, which I worked incredibly hard on with former players, going over Boise State, all of their position groups, previewing. Definitely watch that video. Reacting to everything going on with the Pac-12 and how that impacts Mountain West. Again, you should watch that video as well. That's the link in the description. Reacting to the terrible new division format or two-team pair-ups that is going to be the Mountain West is shifting to, and also offering my solution. Links to both those videos in the description. However, I'm finally here with this video. Yes, this video is coming out on Sunday. We've already had some Mountain West games that happened yesterday after the Week 0 games. All of these predictions were made before that games. I won't be changing any of my predictions based on the performances of those games, wins or losses, how those teams perform. So this is truly a preseason preview video. Nothing that's happened on Saturday will impact how I view these teams' performances on this season. However, it might change my perspective a little bit on who I think might be their top players. We'll talk about that here in a second. We'll talk about those games, what happened yesterday, and potentially how they impact the Mountain West. But as far as previewing overall, my predictions for the season, game by game, none of that's going to be changed based on what happened yesterday. So I'm incredibly excited. Let's get right down to it. I did this last year. I was really close overall. I was only off by 26 games, which was equal to Athlon Sports. However, I was much better than Athlon Sports when it came down to being within one game or predicting the schedule perfectly for each of these teams. Out of 12 Mountain West teams, I was within one game or perfect on 7 of them. Mountain West, Athlon Sports was perfect or within one on 4. So I had 7, Athlon Sports had 4. There were a couple of teams that really, again, coming off that 2020 COVID year, which was really hard to predict. There was a lot of teams that necessarily didn't shift up the way that I was expecting. But I think that perhaps this year it'll be a little easier to predict. However, the transfer portal has racked some of these teams, and it's going to be interesting to see how they react. We already saw that yesterday with those Week 0 games. Let's get right into previewing these games. We're going to go game by game, alphabetical through each of the divisions, Air Force all the way up through UNLV, give you a record prediction, talk a little bit about what happened last season as far as overall record for these teams. We'll go game by game, my predictions for the season for each of these teams. I'll also give you my top player for each of these teams, and then at the end, I will wrap up with how I think that this is going to stack out for the Mountain West. Bottom to top, 1 through 6 for each of the Mountain and the West Division, and who I think will be meeting in that Mountain West Championship game. So starting right off the bat here with Air Force. Air Force last season going 10-3, had a very good year. Of course, they had a bunch of players come back, which was weird for Air Force. They had an opportunity to send players home to miss the 2020 season due to COVID, but they could come back for an additional super senior year, a 5th year, which is not usual for the Air Force Academy. Usually you're 4 years and out. They don't have red shirt. You just go through 4 years and you go into the Air Force. However, due to COVID, due to some other situations there, the Academy allowed that exception. So Air Force was stacked. Didn't necessarily impact their starters, but they had a lot of depth behind them. They had a great season last year. I'm actually expecting a good year for them as well. Athlon Sports is as well. They're projecting 9-3. I'm a little bit less than that. I'm going to say 8-4. This was a team last year that I predicted their record perfectly. Athlon Sports was off by 2. Wasn't quite as hyped on Air Force as I was last season. They were down 2 on this team last year, but I predicted it perfectly. They're thinking they're going to go 9-3, 6-2. I think they're going to go 8-4, 4-4. We'll work through their schedule here. Northern Iowa, I think that's going to be a win. Colorado, I think that Air Force can get this win. I think they can go Colorado's coming to them at home. So it's a chance to go get their rival here to take the Bison at home. I think that they can get a win there. Wyoming, I'm going to call that a loss here, not because I think that Wyoming necessarily is the team to beat Air Force, or that they're better than Air Force. It's just that I think that Air Force is going to drop a game somewhere in the season that they should win, that they're going to go in, they're going to be better than that team, they should win, and they're just going to lose it somewhere in this season. And I'm just penciling in Wyoming here. Again, not holding myself specifically to the Wyoming loss, but I just think at one point they are going to lose a game that they should win, and that's going to be an additional loss for them that season. So I think that right now, I'm just going to pencil that in as Wyoming win against a devastated Nevada team. We'll talk about them later. I think they can beat Navy. I think they'll lose to Utah State, who looks like they should be good again this year, even though they did struggle against UConn. We'll talk about that when we get to the Utah State section. But then I think that they won against UNLV. I think that they will win against Boise State, and I talked about that in my Boise State preview video for the 2022 season. We'll talk about that a little bit next, but I think that they'll get a win against Boise State. always tough to go up and play at the academy. Boise State has always had an issue figuring out that academy offense. I think that they get a win against Army. I'm calling it. Commanders and Chiefs Trophy is coming home to Air Force this year. Let's go. And then New Mexico, I think they're going to win there. Then I think the end of the season will be coming up hyped. They have a chance for the Mountain West Championship game, but I think it's going to go off a little bit off the rails here. Colorado State bringing in Mike Norvell, bringing in a bunch of transfers. They have been putting in money for years into that program. I think Colorado State is going to be much improved this season. Of course, it's a rivalry game as well. I think that Colorado State is going to be able to get that win. San Diego State, I think that's going to be a loss as well. San Diego State, a team that I do think is not going to be quite as good as they were last year. We'll talk about that towards the end of the video when we get to San Diego State. However, I think that San Diego State is going to manage to get this win here. So 8-4 overall. Top player for Air Force going to be Brad Roberts for me. Brad Roberts, he's a senior for Air Force. Had a great season last year, 1,352 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. Heart and soul, I think, of this offense. Of course, they're an option offense. They got a lot of different players that move this team down the field. However, Brad Roberts is their main tailback there. Zeke Daniels, a quarterback who hasn't necessarily lived up to expectations for what he could potentially become. I don't know if he's going to necessarily take that step forward this year, but I think that with Brad Roberts behind at tailback, it doesn't really matter necessarily quite as much who's at quarterback because you've got a really reliable, amazing running back here in Brad Roberts. So Air Force 8-4, 4-4 is my projection. Moving on to Boise State. I'm not going to go game by game here because I just did that in a Boise State 2022 preview video, which I did with Master Football. So go watch the link in the description. I'm just going to say overall, I think that they're going to have a good season. 10-2, 6-2 Mountain West. I think that their top player is going to be George Holani. I think that heart and soul game, we talk about heart and soul of a team. George Holani, when he was out of the season last year, Boise State looked like a completely different team. No really reliable run game. George Holani, there's not a ton of depth behind them. They have a true freshman. They brought in a transfer there. So it looks like there's going to be some potential behind Holani, but no true reliable depth. So Holani, if he gets injured, the whole team is going to shift depending on how Holani does this season. So George Holani for me, number 24, he's going to be the main heart and soul of this offense. So he's going to be the top player for me for Boise State. And like I said, I won't go game by game because I already did that for Boise State. Watch that video, link in the description. All right, Colorado State. Team that went 3-9 last year, but this is not the 3-9 Colorado State team of 2021. This is a team that brought in Mike Norvell and 9 or 10, I think it was 9 transfers came in from, 9 players brought in from Nevada. So this is a completely different Colorado State team. The biggest guy for me here is going to be Clay Millen, true freshman for them. A freshman for them, brought in from Nevada, a player who was the highest recruited player ever for Nevada. He's now been brought over to Colorado State. I think that he's got a lot of potential. Mike Norvell, for me, is one of the best, if not the best coaches in the Mountain West right now. So for me, 8-4 is what I'm giving them. Athlon Sports is saying 6-6. 6-6, 5-4. I think they can do better than that. I think they go 8-4, 6-2. Last year, I predicted Colorado State perfectly. I wasn't off by any. I predicted their record perfectly last season. Athlon Sports was off by 1. They thought that they'd do one better than they ended up doing. So looking at their schedule here, how did I get to that 8-4? Well, lost to Michigan. I think they'll take a loss to Michigan here. Middle Tennessee, a win against Middle Tennessee, lost to Washington State. It's just 2 hard Power 5 games out the bat with a new coaching staff. Not that they can't win these games. Well, I don't think they can win against Michigan. Not that they couldn't beat Washington State, but too early in the season, still a developing team. Sacramento State's a win. Nevada's a win. Utah State take a loss to them. Hawaii a win, especially after what happened yesterday with Vanderbilt. Again, I wrote this before that happened, but especially after what happened yesterday with Vanderbilt, I think that should be an easy win. Loss to Boise State. Win against San Jose State, win against Wyoming, win against Air Force, and win against New Mexico to close out the season on a really nice stretch to be one of the better teams here in the Mountain West. I think that they have a real chance to maybe go out and try for that Mountain West Championship game. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, but I think this is going to be a much improved Colorado State game. Maybe not a super dangerous team. I think their schedule is light enough that 8-4 is maybe reflecting a little bit of the schedule. However, talking about year 2, year 3 under Mike Norvell, this is going to be an extremely dangerous Colorado State team. Down the road here, I don't think it's going to happen this year, but down the road, I do think this is going to be a team that could go and challenge Boise State or go and get a win potentially against Boise State. Again, Colorado State is a team that's never beaten Boise State. I think that down the road here, if Mike Norvell sticks it out and keeps getting some recruiting classes under him, this is this Colorado State team that's going to be very dangerous. This year, not quite as dangerous, but much improved. New Mexico, 3-9 is what I'm throwing out for them. They went 3-9 last year as well. I was I think I was +1. I actually didn't write it down on myself here. I can actually check here real quick. So I was +1 on this team last season. Athlon Sports was +2, so I thought they'd do one better than they ended up doing. Athlon Sports is going 4-8, 1-7. I think they'll go 3-9, 0-8. They just don't have a lot of depth returning. 4 players on offense, 7 players on defense. It's a New Mexico team. I mean, New Mexico, they'll occasionally have some okay years. I don't think this is going to be one of them. I think they'll get a win against Maine, lose, and then just go on a massive losing streak here. Boise State, UTEP, LSU. I think they can win against UNLV. Now, looking at what UNLV did yesterday against an FCS school, but they actually have a viable passing game. That might end up being a loss for New Mexico. But again, I wrote these record predictions down before that. I'm not letting that game impact my preseason projections. So currently having a win against UNLV, lost to Wyoming. I think they can go beat New Mexico State. Of course, gave Nevada a little bit of a run for their money, but then Nevada also losing a ton of players, not necessarily the same team that they were last year. We'll talk about that a little bit later on here. But I think that they'll then lose the rest of the games of their season. Fresno State, Utah State, Air Force, San Diego State, Colorado State, all going to be losses for here. If we were talking about a top player for New Mexico, I'd probably have to go Jarek Reed second. Senior for them, safety, 89 tackles last season, 6 passes defended, I believe. He also had an interception, if I'm getting that correct here. I believe he also finished the season with an interception last year. So he's a good player for them. Yes, he did. 1 interception, 6 passes defended, and 89 tackles. So a good player for New Mexico, but just not enough to make up for the lack of skill overall on this roster. All right, Utah State Aggies, a team that went 11-3, 7-2, of course, winning the Mountain West Championship game. They did drop a game to Boise State. They also dropped a game to Wyoming, which was weird. So they had a couple of weird ones there. Not that I would call the Boise State loss a weird one. That was a really good game by Boise State, but they did have a couple of weird losses along the road there. But they did have it also at the same time an incredible season, beating 2 Power 5 teams to begin and start the season. Washington State and Oregon State there, of course, going and winning the Mountain West Championship game. Now, big thing here for Utah State, they return a lot of players, 8 players on offense, 5 players on defense. However, they are without 3 out of their top 4 receiving threats are going to be gone here for Utah State. That is going to really hurt them. It seems to have already impacted them a little bit yesterday when they played UConn. It just didn't look like the same Utah State team that we saw last year. Of course, it could just be kind of those early season jitters. I do think that Utah State's going to be better than what they reflected against UConn there. But their defense looked very weak against UConn. I mean, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. They gave up 245 yards rushing against UConn, 364 yards total overall. Offensively, they definitely picked up and looked much better, especially I think they're in that second half. And they ended up being able to complete for over 281 yards passing. They had a bunch of different players receiving all over the field and showing some success there, and a bunch of yards rushing, 161 yards rushing as well. So I think that this is a Utah State team that's going to be fine. I don't think that UConn game should necessarily be, there's no cause for alarm necessarily. However, I do think that it's a Utah State team that's going to take a little bit of a while to find out who those weapons are now for them versus who they were last season. 8-4 is what I'm calling. 8-4, which actually reflects exactly what Athlon Sports is calling for them. They're saying 6-2 Mountain West. I'm saying 5-3 Mountain West. We'll talk about this here when we look at their schedule in a second. I did do better than Athlon Sports did on predicting their roster, but I was still off by a lot. I was under 4 for their prediction last year for their schedule. So I was predicting not quite as good a year as they ended up having. Athlon Sports, though, was a lot worse. They were saying they were under 5 on predicting the schedule. So win against UConn, I called that correctly. Next week, though, they have to go play Alabama. That's going to be a loss. I mean, and that is also going to be a big wear and tear on this offense, on this team. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the rest of their season. But I think they can beat Weber State, UNLV, BYU, a team that is, I think they're going to be good. I think a lot of people aren't necessarily as high on BYU as they should be. Of course, they lost Algier, which was their top running back. I'm not going to go in depth here because this is not a BYU preview. However, I do think BYU is going to be good. I think that will be a win against Utah State, so a loss by the Aggies. I think that they can win against Air Force, Colorado State, Wyoming, New Mexico, Hawaii. I think that they're going to drop a game here somewhere that they shouldn't, a little bit like I was talking about with Air Force. So I have penciled in right now a loss to San Jose State. Again, I don't think necessarily, I'm not saying, yes, they're going to lose to San Jose State. However, I think they're going to lose a game that they shouldn't. I think that 3 losses there are pretty solid. I think they'll lose to Alabama. I think they'll lose to BYU, and I do think that they'll lose to Boise State as well. This is a better Boise State team than it was last season coming to play Utah State, and it's also Utah State team that's not necessarily as good as it was last season. I think Boise State will get this win. However, so that's 3 losses right there that I think are pretty much guaranteed. I am holding myself to those 3. I think that somewhere in this road, kind of like they lost to Wyoming out of the blue and they shouldn't have, I think they're also going to lose a game that they shouldn't. And right now I'm just saying San Jose State. Top player for them, Logan Bonner. No surprise there. Amazing quarterback for them. Over 3,000 yards passing, 3,628 yards passing, 36 touchdowns. Didn't look amazing yesterday. 80% QBR rating, 20 of 29, 281 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, but no picks for them. And again, you lose your top receivers. You got to get some new guys in. It's going to be different when you feel that game environment. So I think give them a couple games here. Get them past UNLV. By the time they go to face BYU, I think they'll be looking a lot better. That game might be close. They might have a chance to go in and win that one. But I think that this is going to be a Utah State team that will be much better down the road. All right. Wyoming here, and we're almost done. This will be the last team that we're looking at in the Mountain Division before we move into looking at the West Division. But Wyoming here, a team that is struggling. This team was absolutely devastated by the transfer portal. One of 3 Mountain West teams that was really hit. Hawaii, Wyoming, and Nevada really hit hard by the transfer portal. Don't have a lot of guys returning. 3 players returning on offense that were starters, and 2 starters returning on defense. So this is really a team that was hit hard, like I said. 7-6 last season. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment for them, considering that they had Xavier Valladay and they had Levi Williams and some other potential guys on this roster who could have gone out and done a much better job than they did. Maybe that impacted their decision to leave. I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. I was pretty close predicting this team last year. I was off by 1. Athlon Sports was off by 2. I thought they'd do 1 better. I thought 8-4. Ended, of course, going 7-5, then losing in the bowl game as well. So, going 6-6. I thought so. We went 6-6, won in the bowl game. I thought they were going to go 7-5. So this was a team that, again, was a little bit below my expectations, but maybe not quite that bad. 4-8 is what I'm saying this year. 4-8, 3-5. Athlon Sports is saying 5-7, 4-4. So we disagree slightly on this, but again, they just don't return anybody. Top player for them is probably going to be Titus Swen. He had a pretty good game yesterday for Wyoming. It was a loss to Illinois, which I coincidentally did predict. We'll just go through the schedule here real fast. Loss to Illinois, loss to Tulsa, win against Northern Colorado, a win against Air Force. And again, that's kind of that penciled in. Maybe they're going to get a win that they shouldn't necessarily down the road here. So win against Air Force, what I currently have. Loss to BYU, loss to San Jose State, win against New Mexico, win against Utah State. Loss against Utah State, correct myself there. Win against Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii looks terrible. Wyoming looks terrible. That's going to be a close game. But win against Hawaii, loss to Colorado State, loss to Boise State, loss to Fresno State. I don't think a ton of L's there should be a surprise, especially considering yesterday going up against a bad Big Ten school in Illinois and getting just absolutely throttled, 6-38. When we look at players who had a decent game, like I said, Swen was one of the few for Wyoming that had a pretty good game, 17 carries for 98 yards rushing. And Peasley, the quarterback transfer from Utah State, he looked terrible against Illinois, 5 of 20, only 30 yards passing. I'm not sure if that reflects Wyoming or if it reflects Illinois' defense. I don't think it does, because Illinois isn't supposed to be very good this season, just similar to last year. They weren't very good. So I think that's more of a reflection on Wyoming. If that is a reflection on Wyoming, they might do worse than this 4-8 projection that I have coming in preseason. But again, Wyoming, a team that's struggling with transfer portal, definitely a rebuild year, maybe 2 or 3 rebuild years for them. I will say the strongest thing they have going for them is Craig Bull. Craig Bull is a guy that can find diamonds in the rough. It doesn't look like they have anyone on this roster. Of course, he struggled against Illinois, but if anybody can take a team and revamp them and develop some guys that we don't even know are there, it's definitely Wyoming. It's definitely Craig Bull. We'll have to see what happens here with Wyoming, but it's not looking good for the Cowboys. All right, that's the conclusion of the Mountain Division segment. Let's go into the West Division, and then we'll talk about overall how this is going to stack up rankings for the Mountain West as far as looking who's going to be appearing in that Mountain West Championship game. All right, so Fresno State here, starting off with the Bulldogs, a team that, of course, did very well last year. 10-3, 6-2 Mountain West. A couple of weird losses there, like a couple of these other teams we've talked about. Boise State, honestly, as a Boise State fan, that was a weird loss. I was hyped that we went in there and crushed them the way that we did. But again, I mean, this was a Fresno State team that was better than the Boise State team last year, and Boise State was able to come in there and get this win. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there with the Fresno State Bulldogs this year. They returned a good amount of players. Most importantly, Jake Haener is back. He tried to transfer and then changed his mind and came back. Jeff Tedford is back for Fresno State, a great coach for them. Had 2 great seasons, 17 and 18. Not such a great season in 19 before he retired. But he's back here after a short sabbatical away from the team. So I think that they're going to continue. I don't think it's going to be much of a drop-off. I don't think they're going to need much of a rebuild or kind of getting used to each other again. I think Fresno State can come back and have a lot of success this year. A lot of people are down on Fresno State. Of course, no appearing in the top 25 for the Bulldogs, and a lot of people really aren't very high on Fresno State, despite the fact that they returned most of their key weapons. Jordan Mims is back, 710 yards rushing. Not their lead rusher last year, but a guy who has a lot of potential to be a good running back here for Fresno State. So I am really high on the Bulldogs, honestly. I was off by 1 last season. I was -1. They did 1 better than I thought they would. Athlon Sports was off by 2. Athlon Sports is projecting 9-4, 6-2. I think 10-2, 7-1. I really do. I think that so that 9-4 Athlon Sports is projecting that Fresno State loses to Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game. So they're projecting 9-3. But I think they can do one better than that. I think they can go 10-2 again this year. I think they go 7-1 overall in the Mountain West. We'll look at the schedule here. I think it's easier than it was last year, and it allows for that 10-2. With the fact, I think Fresno State is going to be another really good team here for the Bulldogs. So Cal Poly that's a tune-up game for them, which is great. Gives them a chance to get under their feet before they head out on the road, or before they head out through the rest of the season. Then they have Oregon State at home, and I think they can definitely beat that team. Boise State also has Oregon State, so it'll be interesting to see how those two teams match up against each other within short succession. Will give Boise State and Fresno State an idea of what they're going to be looking at down the road. So I think they can get a win against Oregon State. USC, I think they can win. I really do. I think that they are capable of. This is a team that almost beat Oregon last year, who was a good Oregon team, a team that beat Ohio State. They should have beat Oregon last year, and they beat UCLA as well. So I think that they definitely can. But what Lincoln Riley is doing down there with USC and all the players that he's buying and bringing in with NIL deals, I really think that it's just too stacked. However, I think Fresno State can do it. I'm not predicting that they do, but I am excited for that game, and I think it's going to be close. Connecticut, win against Connecticut, lost to Boise State, as I've already said, and you want to hear more of my reasoning. I'm not really explaining the losses to Boise State because I already did that in my Boise State 2022 season preview video, which I did with Master Football. If you want to hear more of my expectations, or reasoning for these losses or wins against Boise State, go watch that video. But I'm going to say loss to Boise State, win against San Jose State, win against New Mexico, win against San Diego State, win against Hawaii, win against UNLV, win against Nevada, and win against Wyoming. So after a loss to USC and a loss to Boise State, I think they finish the season off here with wins all the way down, end up in the top 25, coming potentially representing in the Mountain West Championship game. Let's talk about the rest of the teams here in this West Division as well. But again, I think this is going to be a good team. Jake Haener, over 4,000 yards passing, has a couple of his top receivers coming back. Mims, I think, is going to be good. I'm really high on Fresno State this year. All right, Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, a team that we knew were going through a rebuild year. We knew that coming in. 1 starting player back on defense, 4 players back on offense, new coach. We knew that this was going to be a rebuild year. I don't think we knew quite how bad a rebuild year this was going to be, though, because I mean, Vanderbilt, I believe, was favored in this matchup, and I think a lot of people probably thought they were going to win. But the way, 63-10, they absolutely pulverized Hawaii. It wasn't even close. Vanderbilt, remember, this is Vanderbilt, the team that had to pull in a soccer player to be their kicker a couple seasons ago, or last season. This is Vanderbilt, the worst team, one of the worst teams, I think, in college football. Definitely the worst team in the Power 5. Destroyed Hawaii, put up 601 total yards against them, 404 rushing yards. That is abysmal. Hawaii had a bunch of turnovers. They looked absolutely terrible out there. I actually thought they were going to win this game. I'll be honest with you. I thought Hawaii was going to go 4-9, 1-7 in the Mountain West. I was off last season. This is one of the few teams that I was kind of a little bit of a blind spot for me. A couple of the West teams were a little bit of blind spots just because they had different seasons in 2020, the COVID year. Didn't end up reflecting into 2021. So I'll be honest, I was off by 3. I thought they were going to do 3 better than they did last season. Athlon Sports was exactly right. So when Athlon Sports says 3-10, 1-7, it already looks like they might be right on that, because I was predicting a win against Vanderbilt. again, I knew Hawaii was going to be terrible, but Vanderbilt's also terrible, and I thought the equal terribleness, going to have to go play at Hawaii. Hawaii might be able to inch a win out in this one, at least make it close. Not close at all. Hawaii much worse than I was predicting going forward. But again, like I said, nothing that happened yesterday is changing my predictions for the season, because this is a preseason preview, already set in stone. So I'm going to say 4-9, 1-7, but it might end up being a lot worse based on what we saw against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt I was calling a win. Obviously, that's a loss. Western Kentucky, a loss. Michigan, loss. DeQuain, a FCS school, hey, but they couldn't beat Vanderbilt, which is basically an FCS school as well. So, but I was calling a win against DeQuain. I was calling a win against New Mexico State. Again, a team that played Nevada close, but we also know how bad Nevada is. So, again, this is a really hard team to predict just because of how this is not the Hawaii team of last season at all. It's a completely different team here that's got to have to build from the foundation all the way up. So it's going to be a tough one for Hawaii here the next couple of seasons, next 4 seasons maybe. San Diego State lost, Nevada lost, Colorado State lost, Wyoming lost, Fresno State lost, Utah State lost. UNLV, sure, I think that they might be able to go in and win that game, but again, UNLV actually won their game against the FCS team yesterday, so and then lost to San Jose State to wrap it up. I don't know if there's a lot more to say about Hawaii. Oh, top players here for Hawaii, I will say that their wide receiver here, Jonah Pinnock, they did have a pretty terrible game overall, but he was a bright spot for them. 7 receptions for 101 yards. Wasn't really on the radar for a lot of people. He had 121 yards receiving in the entire season. Yesterday, he has 101 yards receiving in one game, so he's almost up to his 2021 total in one performance. So, I mean, depending on what Hawaii is able to do, maybe they're able to come back from this and do better the rest of the year. He is potentially a player that they can build around, a guy who's able to go out for. That was on 7 receptions for 101 yards, so definitely a deep threat here for Hawaii. But this was a hard game to watch. I tried to watch the first half of it, and then by that time it was like 35 to 7, I think, and I just said, okay, I can't, I'm done. I gotta go to bed, and then I woke up and it was even worse than when I went to sleep. So this is a terrible Hawaii team. It's going to be a tough one out there on the island. Okay, Nevada. We've already kind of talked about them a little bit. A team that only returns 2 offensive players, 4 starters on defense. This is, again, a team that lost their head coach, was devastated by the transfer portal, went 8-5 last year, but that doesn't reflect this season because it's a complete different Nevada team. Basically, all Nevada has gone to Colorado State, all the players that were good, or they've graduated or gone elsewhere. So this is a Nevada team that is hurting. I was saying 5-7, 2-6. Athlon Sports agrees. 5-7, 2-6 sounds fair. I was off by 1 last year. I thought they'd do 1 better than they ended up doing. Athlon Sports was absolutely right, predicted this team perfectly. So they do have a returning running back here, Tua, who's a good running back. I really do believe he's a good running back. He played well yesterday. He's a guy that came back from them with 720 yards rushing in 2021. He was a running back who performed well for them yesterday against New Mexico State. Had over 100 yards rushing for Nevada, 109 yards rushing to be exact. 5.7 yards average per carry. He's a big guy. He can get it done on the ground. So it's good to have a veteran like that at your running back position that you can kind of give the ball to and let everything else figure itself out. But this is a team that struggled, and I do mean struggled, to beat New Mexico State. This was a close game, much longer than it should have been. Nevada took a lot longer to put this team away than they should. So this is a team, again, New Mexico State last season, I believe, didn't win a game. So you have a team like Nevada who has a lot higher expectations for themselves going out and struggling against New Mexico State. That's not a good sign. So I said 5-7, 2-6 because they have a easy schedule or some openings for them to be able to go out and get wins. But if they can barely beat New Mexico State, we'll have to see how much else how that impacts the rest of their year. So I was saying a win against New Mexico State, win against Texas State. Now again, that's in question now that they could barely beat New Mexico State. Win against Incarnate Word, but then lost to Iowa, lost to Air Force, lost to Colorado State. Win against Hawaii, I do believe that is possible considering that Hawaii is so bad. I mean, they really are terrible. So I do think that they can get this win against Hawaii. That still stands. Lost to San Diego State, lost to San Jose State, lost to Boise State, lost to Fresno State, and maybe a win against UNLV. However, of the two Nevada teams that played yesterday, of course, one was playing against FCS, one was playing against FBS. But honestly, I mean, Idaho State is probably better than New Mexico State. And New Mexico State, you don't understand that this is a absolutely terrible team. This is one of the worst teams in college football. I know I already said that a little bit about Vanderbilt, but I really do mean it when I talk about New Mexico State. This was a team that went 2-10 last year. Their wins against South Carolina State and UMass. That's it. They were destroyed by pretty much everyone else on the roster. Nevada could barely beat them. So this is a really, really tough year for Nevada fans, which as a Boise State fan, I love to see. However, it's going to be tough for Wolfpack fans this year. Hopefully Boise State can go in there and absolutely crush them. No, I'm trying to be a little bit unbiased here in my predictions for the Mountain West, and I was unbiased when I made the predictions 5-7 overall, but it's Nevada. I can't help it. All right, San Diego State. We're almost done here. A couple more teams to look at here before we wrap up the Mountain West preview series. So San Diego State, a team that did very well last year, 12-2, 7-1. I think that they are going to do well this year, even though they don't return a lot of guys. I mean, this is a team that was not hurt by the transfer portal necessarily, but by graduation. I mean, they had a lot of depth, a lot of seniors on that roster last year. So 3 returners on offense. They lose their running back. They lose their quarterback. That's going to be huge. Their defense looks pretty solid. 7 stars back on defense. So I think that their defense can step up and support this team. It was never an offense that went out and scored a ton of points. It was a solid defense that the offense was able to do enough to go out and get wins. And they, like I said, they did well. They had, was it 2 Power 5 wins last year? Yeah, Arizona and Utah. So this was a good San Diego State team. Obviously a team that was able to beat Boise State towards the end of the season, and they did. There was a lot of games last year that Boise State lost because of the referees. Air Force partially, definitely Oklahoma State game, but San Diego State was fair and square. Definitely San Diego State went out there, played better, ended up beating Boise State fair and square. I won't make any complaints about the referees in that one necessarily. That was a fair win. So this was a good San Diego State team. Athlon Sports isn't necessarily as high on them. They're saying 8-4, 5-3. I will say that I was off last year in San Diego State. I thought that they were going to do much worse than they did. I think I was saying 7-5, so I was off by 5, and they totally blew my expectations out of the water. Athlon Sports was off by 4, so they were kind of right there with me on them not being that great, and they were great. They bring in a great... I won't say great transfer as in he's a great quarterback, but it's a really nice pick for them to bring over Braxton Burmeister, former starting quarterback at Virginia Tech. So they bring in a Power 5 starting quarterback to come play for them. And I think he has a lot of potential in the right system. I think he can do some good things here for San Diego State. And I think that they bring back Chance Bell, who has a chance to be a good running back for them as well. So, again, San Diego State's not necessarily ever built on their offenses. They're built on their defenses. Their defense is coming back, so I think this is still going to be a good team. I'm saying 9-3, 6-2. I think they will win against Arizona to open up the season. Idaho State, win against Idaho State. Lose to Utah. I think they can win that. I think they're capable of doing that. But also, it's a different Utah team than they beat last season. It's a much better Utah team, much more established, coming off of Pac-12 championship. So this is a much better Utah team. San Diego State could beat them, but this early on in the season with transfer quarterback coming in and a new running back, or not a new running back, but a new starting running back that they're having to break in, it's just too early in the season, I think, for a good San Diego State team to make their presence known. So I think that Utah will have the win in this one. But I think that they can win against Toledo early on, though. Early in the season, Boise State, I think that, again, kind of talking about like we did with Utah just now, not San Diego State being as established as they will later on in the season. I'm really happy we played San Diego State earlier on in the year. Boise State got a lot of revenge that they want to make up for. I think Boise State can go get that win. And then I think they'll win against Hawaii, win against Nevada, lose to Fresno State just because Fresno State's really good. I think it's going to be really close. Could be a 50-50 toss-up. And then win the rest of the way out. UNLV, San Jose State, New Mexico, and Air Force. All right, 2 more here real quick. San Jose State, a team that was terrible last year. 5-7, 3-5 after coming off of a Mountain West Championship win against Boise State in 2020. Come off, of course, lose their starting quarterback. That really hurt them. They looked terrible last year. I was way off on them. I thought they were going to I thought they were going to be one of the top teams in the West. They were not. I was +6 on them. So I was off by 6 games. Athlon Sports, similar, off by 4. So San Jose State, again, there was a lot of teams in that COVID season that was just weird, and they didn't reflect necessarily what they were going to be doing going forward. It's a different San Jose State team than last year. They returned 4 stars on offense, 8 stars back on defense. I think the defense is going to be improved, and they bring in a quarterback who I really like, Chevin Cordero, the quarterback from Hawaii. So the former, I was talking about Hawaii being terrible, being wrecked by the transfer portal. Well, this is one of those guys left and has come to San Jose State. He's a dual threat guy who I was really high on. I really liked him at Hawaii. I don't think that Hawaii took advantage of what he was capable of performing to his strengths. He's a guy who's thrown for over 6,000 yards passing in his 4 years in college football and rushed for over 1,000 yards in his four seasons in college football. I believe he's had 2 back-to-back 300-plus yard seasons rushing for Hawaii. So he's a quarterback who I really like. I think that with the defense that San Jose State has, combined with them getting a little bit better, not that they're going to be at the best in the Mountain West or even close to it, but I think they will be better, combined with the fact that you've got Chevin Cordero, who I think is a good quarterback for them. I think San Jose State's going to be much better this year. They also have a schedule that I think allows for some easier wins. And then you have the fact that a lot of the Mountain West is struggling. I mean, Nevada, Hawaii, and Wyoming all going to be down this year. So I think it's a chance for San Jose State to step up and be better. Athlon Sports is saying 6-6, 3-5. I think 8-4, 5-3. Let's break it down. Portland State, I think that'll be a win. Auburn, I think that'll be an easy loss. Western Michigan win. Wyoming win. UNLV win. Loss to Fresno State. Win against New Mexico State. So see, early on, when you take out Auburn, you take out Fresno State, there's nobody on there that San Jose State shouldn't be able to go into and say, yeah, we can beat them. Win against Nevada. Lost to Colorado State. Lost to San Diego State. I'm going to say I'm putting win here against Utah State. Again, I'm not necessarily saying they're going to beat Utah State. I'm not. But I think that they'll get a win maybe somewhere down the road that I didn't think that they were going to. And so I'm going to put a win here. This could be easily a 7-5 team, but I think that they have the capability to get to 8-4. And I kind of already explained why I'm putting a win there for Utah State or against Utah State, and then a win against Hawaii. So 8-4, 5-3, much improved San Jose State team with Chevin Cordero. Of course, then he's going to be gone. But for this season, at least, I think that San Jose State fans can look forward to at least a bowl game and potentially a bowl game win. So this, I think, is going to be a much improved San Jose State Spartan team. All right, last one. Let's wrap it up here before we look real quick, rack 'em and stack 'em for the Mountain West. UNLV Rebels, my gosh, the Pac-12 startup team here, the future Pac-12 UNLV Rebels. Yeah, right. The UNLV is always one of the worst teams in college football. When they started talking about UNLV to the Pac-12, I need to do a whole video talking about why that would be a terrible decision. I've actually been wishing for a while that UNLV would leave the Mountain West and go down to the FCS, would just leave the FBS altogether. So I'm actually not opposed to UNLV being out of the conference because they are absolute dead weight. They don't contribute anything, at least in the form of football. Obviously, basketball is where they're able to be a contributing factor. But in the form of football, they don't contribute anything, and that's the most important sport. That's the one that brings in all the money and all the attention. So I'm actually in favor of UNLV leaving the conference, just not stepping up to the Pac-12 where they absolutely don't belong, when they don't even belong in the Mountain West. So take that as you will. I probably would have lost all the UNLV fans that were sticking around potentially. Not that there are any. I mean, that's the other thing. UNLV, massive TV market. UNLV doesn't bring any fans to their games. They don't even have a UNLV fan page on Facebook. We at the Mountain West Conference Alliance on Facebook, the Facebook group that I've started that you probably found this video on, we have almost every team represented in the Mountain West. I believe it's 9 out of 12 teams are represented. One of the teams that's not represented, UNLV, because they don't have fans. So take that as you will. I think they're going to be absolute garbage this season. They did get a win yesterday against an Idaho State, an FCS school, but that's the only win I'm thinking they're going to get here. 1-11 is what I was saying. I did predict that win against Idaho State. I made a joke about it, but it wasn't really a joke. I did mean that meme. 1-11, 0-8. Athlon Sports is higher on them for some reason. 4-8, 3-5. I was only off by 1 on this team last year. Athlon Sports called it correctly. I believe that they were saying 2-10. Yeah, they were saying 2-10. I was saying 1-11 again. So maybe they'll get one more win that I'm giving them here. I sincerely doubt it, though. Win against Idaho State, lost to California, lost to North Texas, lost to Utah State, New Mexico, San Jose State, Air Force, Notre Dame, San Diego State, Fresno State, Hawaii, Nevada. Even if UNLV wasn't garbage, this is still a really tough schedule. I mean, maybe not Hawaii and Nevada at the end there, but this is still a pretty tough schedule overall. They play some really tough out-of-conference teams other than Idaho State, and they play some good teams here in the Mountain West. So regardless of whether UNLV is as terrible as I think they will, they're still going to be a bad year for them because it's a tough schedule. And we're talking about highlight players. I've said it for every other team, so I might as well throw it out here for UNLV. They did have a good game against Idaho State, surprisingly. 356 yards passing again, against Idaho State. But Brumfield, a guy who was really not on the radar for anything. I mean, Athlon Sports doesn't even have him here as a potential starter for them. Sophomore for the team, had a little bit of experience last year, but isn't really a guy that stepped up and been a contender. Well, he is, I guess, their starting quarterback here going forward. He had a really nice game against Idaho State, 356 yards passing, 21 out of 25, 4 touchdowns. A very impressive night for Brumfield. The main recipient of that, Ricky White, 182 yards receiving for the wide receiver. And that was on 8 passes, 72-yard long, 2 touchdowns, a bunch of deep bombs here for UNLV. So maybe this is a team that can go around and throw it, 20, 30 times a game and have some success through the air. We'll have to see how it goes. I don't think so. I think UNLV is going to be absolutely terrible. Like I said, 111 is what I'm projecting. But maybe in that 111, they'll have some exciting big yardage, big stats as far as passing game goes plays. All right, really quick wrapping up here. Mountain Division, West Division. Number one, shouldn't be too much of a surprise if you were keeping track. I think it is going to be Boise State. I do have 3 teams here finishing with 5-3 or better records. Boise State in the Mountain West. Boise State, Utah State, and Colorado State, I think, are all going to be contenders. I think any one of those teams could take it. Even Air Force, who I predict going 4-4 here, I think all 4 of those teams are in play this year for the Mountain West. I think it's going to be one of the closest battles of any group of 5 division. I think this is going to be a really tough conference, especially tough division for Boise State to play, but I think it's going to be a much better Boise State team. You can watch my entire analysis of that in my 2022 preview video that I did. But again, 10-2, 6-2. I think Utah State will come up second here, 8-4, 5-3. I think Colorado State will come up third, 7-5, 5-3. Air Force pulling up at fourth, 8-4, 4-4, but getting the Commanders and Chiefs trophy. So out of the Mountain West Championship game or in contention necessarily at the end of the season is what I'm thinking, but at least having that Commanders and Chiefs trophy, which honestly, if you had to, I think most Air Force fans would agree with this. If you had to pick one or the other, Mountain West Championship or Commanders and Chiefs trophy, I really think that most fans would say Commanders and Chiefs trophy. And then I think that Wyoming Cowboys 4-8, 3-5, New Mexico Lobos 3-9, 0-8 to finish it out. So Boise State representing the Mountain Division in the Mountain West Championship game. In the West Division, you've got, again, 3 teams I think are going to be vying for it. I think Fresno State, San Diego State, and I almost said UNLV. Never. Fresno State, San Diego State, and San Jose State, I think, are 3 teams that are going to vie for this division. I think Fresno State is going to end up taking it in the end. It's 10-2, 7-1 is what I'm projecting here for the Bulldogs. San Diego State pulling up just behind them. If whoever wins the San Diego State-Fresno State matchup, I believe will represent this conference. So if I'm off by a game and San Diego State takes that game, they'll represent in the Mountain West Championship game. Fresno State 10-2, 7-1. San Diego State 9-3, 6-2 coming in second. San Jose State 8-4, 5-3 coming in third. Nevada 5-7, 2-6 coming in fourth. Fifth, Hawaii 4-8, 1-7, and then last and definitely least, UNLV 1-11, 0-8. So that would put Boise State versus Fresno State in the Mountain West Championship game. In the past, when this has happened, when they've played each other during the regular season, under Jeff Tedford, when they've played each other during the regular season and then played in the Mountain West Championship game, they've swapped. So if Boise State won it during the regular season, they would lose it in the Mountain West Championship game, and vice versa. If they lost during the regular season, they won it in the Mountain West Championship game. So, and Jeff Tedford did that twice in 2017 and 2018. Boise State and Fresno State fans remember both those games, all 4 of those games vividly. So, do I think that's going to happen this year? It's going to be really close. Boise State, Fresno State are going to be 2 of the top teams in the Mountain West here. 2 good teams, 2 of the top teams in the group of 5. This is going to be a really interesting battle to watch. It definitely could happen. I don't know if I definitely put a number to it right now. If I'm just throwing out a random guess, I think that because Andy Diablo's second year in, he's hungry for it. That's his number one goal. You could say the same thing for Jeff Tedford, I guess, so coming in. But Jeff Tedford's I didn't say they would need too much getting used to each other again, but he is taking over a system that isn't his, even though it was his only a few years ago. First year coming back, head coach Jeff Tedford versus second year, a little more established Andy Diablo's good Boise State team with a lot more starters coming back on defense versus a good Fresno State team with maybe some losses at key position, especially running back. I think if Boise State is healthy, Boise State will win this Mountain West Championship game and represent the Mountain West in whatever bowl game that ends up happening to be. So that's my preview, bottom to top. Again, if you want more in-depth preview of Boise State season, watch my Boise State 2022 preview video that I did, and then watch my Boise State 2022 preview series, which is going to be super in-depth, ton of highlights, analysis from former players. Great video. But thank you so much for everybody for coming on. Stay tuned, like and subscribe. There'll be more Boise State and Mountain West content throughout the rest of the season. Thanks so much for sticking with me today. This was a ton of fun. And as always, go Big Blue!